We are energy beings, and our space is full of things that are made out of atoms. And inside of these atoms, you have light. So we're all just energy. And it's the practice of using everything you bring into your space with intention, because it's always going to mirror back something. So a lot of times we don't realize we go 15 years with an item that we really don't like because someone gave it to us. And every time we walk into the house, we see this thing we don't like. And it's like sitting there in our subconscious mind, and we're like uncomfortable with it, but we don't even notice because we have so many thoughts that go through our minds in just a few seconds. So the practice is about creating spaces that flow, that every finish in that space is supporting your well-being and harmonic flow, and having an intention for everything you bring into it so that we don't have all this clutter for no reason, right? So there's a purpose for everything in this design philosophy that I use, and it's all around what is this for? What is the purpose? And of course, we can have a throw pillow that's like a Louis Vuitton or whatever. Luxury is still going to be there, but with a purpose, not just like ego. I call it ego design, not just this beautiful thing, but what's it doing? Is it serving the client?
Hola, I have Penelope next in the podcast. She's an interior designer in Miami, Florida. I am just so grateful to have people like her in my life and agree to come on the show with me and talk about their businesses and, how they walk through their clients, and know that I'm not alone in this, that our health are so important and who we are is very important on what we do every day and how we show up to the world. Join us to discuss about the world behind the scenes, about the interior design world and how it works. And hopefully you would love it and also know that it's not that scary and sometimes it's very necessary. Yes, we can do many, many things, but to hire a professional or people that can help you as well, not only in design or wellness, in your marketing or health journey, it's important. It's important, and it'll bring peace to you, and it'll bring peace into your life. Abundance, which I call abundance, health, wealth, and love. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Besitos. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hola, Penelope.
Hi,
How are you?
good, and you?
Good. Thank you for joining me today in the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I love it. I love your background.
Well, thank you. It's
Beautiful.
all from Amazon.
Really? You can't tell at all.
I got into like this whole, I want to make a few budget friendly spaces and just link them to Amazon. So I use the space as an example.
Wow. What's behind you with the mushroom? Just curious. I see some mushrooms in like no, those are carpet samples.
Oh, this is just my
Oh,
boyfriend gets me random cards and just for no reason at all. He's so
so
sweet.
cute.
Yeah, he's
That's so
adorable.
cute. He's a keeper.
Yeah, he is. But yeah, mostly this is just my sample collection. Whatever projects I'm working on, I lay them out so I can keep them in my forefront and I have to go digging for them.
Any favorite projects from the past year?
Just finishing one, and I'm obsessed. It's a small 2 bedroom unit, but it was completely gutted out. And, it was very interesting to see how both clients, their taste was just so in alignment. So I was very excited because it made it much easier for me to design. But it turned out to be a very moody, dim, very luxe vibe, really rich finishes, really dark blues. So it's kind of where you get some of these, tones, which we love, blues and purples. And we got really lucky with this beautiful stone that was actually at the on a value vault, what they call it. So it's kind of like take what you can. And it was just a stunning, most perfect stone that matched absolutely everything that we needed. We didn't even get to see it in person because it's one of those that you can't make an appointment. It's take it or leave it. So, and no returns. So we really based the entire design around this stone we've never seen in person and we can't return. And it turned out to be absolutely perfect. So we just finished it. We're putting some final punch out and finishing touches, letting them move in and settle in. And hopefully we can shoot it after the holidays, once the Christmas tree has been taken down and all the minor, we have to select art. But after that, I'm so excited for showing, to shoot that one and show that one.
And that's so curious. So that decision you made of buying that stone, like what is there something behind it that allows you to take those big risks? For
Trusting the
example,
process.
trusting the process.
Trusting the process and they were very aware they were taking a risk. The price was just too good to pass up. And it was one of those things where we had already quoted a few other things and they weren't so crazy about it. And then the price kind of was just like, it's really not worth it. And then when this opportunity came up, I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Let me go on the website because they have like a Value Vault website where you can just skim through what's there. And I just came across that one out of absolutely everything. It was the only one, and the square footage happened to just be exactly what we need. And I was like, okay, alignment. So, yeah, alignment and trusting the process is really the motto when it came to that stone.
I'm curious when you're talking about the different colors that you picked for this apartment, what was the process you took the clients to be able to come up with that color palette?
So, I mean, I meet with them like we all do, and I pick their brain a little bit, but I kind of go off of their personality. Like I said, there's a questionnaire that I kind of go through with them to see what their personality is. And then I follow these feng shui, very ancient principles that, based on your personality type, there is an element that you're mostly drawn to. So he's a surgeon, a spine surgeon. So he's very much about precision. Everything is just, so when I arrived, I could tell that he's very much about let's sit and structure the meeting. It's not like a free flow kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, he's kind of like me, very precision, very like step one, step two, step three. And his wife is gives me a lot of like that water element, which is go with the flow, creative. She does a lot of creative things. She's a chef. She does like bedazzled stuff sometimes, arts and crafts. So I was like, okay, we got some water and metal element here. And that's how I was able to draw in the color palette. So surprisingly, of course, her favorite color was blue because it completely matched her personality. So I wasn't surprised about that. So I brought in the muted tones of the blues with the gold finishes and the metal finishes. So we're using finishes like this that are metallic in nature for, the headboard. But he loves chagrin, which is his absolutely wanted everything chagrin. I'm like, okay, we need to pick and choose. So, we blended it with some wallpaper, right? So bringing in that blue with the textures. So that's kind of how I put it together and it hit. What I've noticed is when I follow these principles, it always hits. If I don't follow these principles, they'll kind of go, "Oh my God, no, wait, that's not the palette." So I kind of learned to just tune into who they are and it never fails me. And then obviously we create kind of like a mood board to make sure we're on the right path before we go off and start making renderings and selecting finishes.
I love that. I love that you use a questionnaire and that you try to know who they are before designing for them. And that also creates I was going to say a flow, but I also feel like it's like fun, right? When you are like, you yourself are surprised of what's going to be. So you almost come with this curiosity of like, let me see who they are. Let me see what colors or materials come out of these practices I use. And then from there, I design for them.
It's kind of
Instead,
like a game.
it's a game. Yeah.
I'm like, let's see, let's test. And I keep testing these principles. And it's very cool to see, like, wow, okay, it worked again and it worked again and it keeps working. So it's fun. It's like a confirmation every time.
Yeah. What is feng shui?
So
At least
feng
for you.
shui, I mean, in a nutshell, feng shui is just the art of the way that chi flows through a space. So, energy, we are energy beings, and our space is full of things that are made out of atoms. And inside of these atoms, you have light. So, we're all just energy. And it's the practice of using everything you bring into your space with intention because it's always going to mirror back something. So a lot of times we don't realize we go 15 years with an item that we really don't like because someone gave it to us. And every time we walk into the house, we see this thing we don't like. And it's like sitting there in our subconscious mind. And we're like uncomfortable with it, but we don't even notice because we have so many thoughts that go through our minds in just a few seconds. So the practice is about creating spaces that flow, that every finish in that space is supporting your well-being and harmonic flow, and having an intention for everything you bring into it so that we don't have all this clutter for no reason, right? So there's a purpose for everything in this design philosophy that I use, and it's all around what is this for, what is the purpose. I don't just bring something into space because it's pretty or because it's like a luck, of course we can have a throw pillow that's like a Louis Vuitton or whatever. Luxury is still going to be there, but with a purpose, not just like ego. I call it ego design, not just this beautiful thing, but what's it doing? Is it serving the client? Um, and understanding. So with feng shui, there's so many aspects to it. The old ancient practice uses the bagua, what they call the bagua map, which is they study the not different centers within the house and how it pertains to the floor plan. That's kind of hard to use unless you're starting from scratch or you are restructuring homes. But in places or in projects that we're really not breaking down walls, we really can't change the layout. I focus more on, okay, what is this person's predominant element and how can I help them feel good here? And then if it happens to fall into the corners, like sometimes when you look at these spec homes, I think they know about this because the kitchen always happens to be in the perfect spot. And it always just looks just like the Bagua map. And I'm like, man, it just always works out. But then there's like these old school homes that don't follow these principles. And then it has missing corners where then I have to get creative. So I don't focus too much on the Bagua maps. But it's interesting with my old client, I didn't consciously do it. And then now when I go back to the house, I'm like, oh, wow, like this is the wisdom corner. And we used exactly the colors we needed to use. And now she likes to meditate there because she's being called, right? So I love that because I didn't even consciously do it. So what I focus more on is the personality and how the finishes help support them or agitate them, which is important.
Agitate them. So, what does agitation mean in design, but also in like a person?
So, for example, a fire element person would be kind of anxious. They can be impulsive, but they also love to entertain and they love music. They love being around people. So, bringing in more red might, it's almost like you're adding fuel to the fire that can increase his anxiety or his, I say his because my client was a fire element. So he loved music, he loved entertainment, which is great. That's all that fire personality. But how do we balance that so that, for example, in the bedroom there was no red and everything was sand tones, like if he was in Tulum, right? Because when you have a lot of fire, how do you kind of dim it a little bit? You put some dirt or sand and then tone it down. So we brought in some of those palettes into the bedroom, so that could be his space of being soothed. And then in the areas where he is entertaining, we bring in wood, because if you wanted to feed fire, you would give it some wood. So we bring in wood elements, and we brought in, surprisingly, he loves green. Of course, you love green because green is like that fuel to fire, which is funny because when I brought up the word fire, he's like, no, 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 I don't want red. I want green. I'm like, yeah, of course you do. So the space has a lot of greens and woods where he entertains. And then as you go up, we've got like light muted blues and sand tones to help soothe him. And then in his area where he has like a music room, we're bringing in more of the browns, all green wallpaper, because that's where he needs that fire, right? To create, to make music. So that's kind of how I use it. I for sure wouldn't bring in something that I know is going to irritate him or make more of an uh anxiousness out, bring more anxiousness out of him, because that's the opposite of what we want to do when he's trying to wind down in the bedroom.
What are you? What element are you?
Well, the interesting thing is we can shift depending on what phases we're in life, which is very, very cool. So I think right now it's interesting. I've always thought of like a wood element because I'm always thinking ahead, always thinking ahead. But that kind of gets can create a lot of frustration when you're seeing too far in advance. So I brought in, my office has a lot of metal and wood, because metal cuts wood, but then so it's like that balance of not thinking so far ahead where I'm creating frustration. And metal is that precision, sit down, get your job done, right? Because the wood element can be very like they're the visionaries, but then nothing gets done, right? So it's kind of, you need a little bit of both, and you need a little bit of that fire element too. So I bring in some of that. So I think I am metal and wood, like a nice combination. And lately, it's funny that you said before the call that the color red came to you, because, lately I've been consciously adding hints of red just to get that like fire that I need to, to stand out and do what I have to do or say what I have to say. So you can incorporate this into your life in so many different ways. Even just what you're wearing can be very intentional to that meeting.
Yeah, I felt like I usually close my eyes and tune into the person I'm meeting. And I felt like, okay, red today.
So funny though, because the other day I was saying something, and my best friend and we talk about this stuff, and she's like, "You're giving such red fire energy these days." I'm like, "I thank you. I've consciously been bringing this into my life, purposely doing it." So I thought it was funny she picked it up.
Yeah, it's interesting how because you put that intention, the people receive it immediately. Like they know. It's almost like you're projecting to them, and then having people that voice it out is
Yes, that's
even
true.
yeah.
It's a nice confirmation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. To work with you, what is the process, and how do you charge for your services?
Yeah, we
If
should. I was just doing that right now before you called me for another client. Okay, so the process. Well, we talked about this before, where we kind of just go with the flow and allow the clients to show up. Kind of, I think that's how most designers operate that don't advertise. So they'll contact me. I'll get on a quick call to figure out what their needs are, and then that's how I can gauge if it's a right fit. Right. If not, I will direct them to whoever can help them. So then I will show up, I'll take a look at the needs, their ideas, take photos, I'll take measurements. I'll look at their ideas and discuss possibilities, other selections, but I don't give too much just because I need to see it in floor plan and, really tune into the space. But in that meeting, I can instantly figure out, again, their personality. So this one I met today, she's very wood element. And it's funny because before she said anything, then she brought up the examples and she wants a tree in the middle of her house. So I'm like, perfect. So very wood element, very neutral. And she's like, if there's any pop of color, it would be green. I'm like, okay. So I just use that as a discovery session. And then I take the measurements, I put together a proposal, which in that case, I will charge per square footage for whatever it is as far as the bid set renderings. And that is based obviously on the square footage of the space. If it's a high end space, we're between, $12 and $15 a square foot. That's kind of the average here. I don't know about where you are. And I also gauge that based on what my team is quoting me. So I'll send out everything that needs to get done, and then I'll have them quote me, and then I'll figure out where within that range that falls. If I can do in the $12 or in the 15. And I also tune into the client as well, what their purpose is. If they're going to remodel and resell, I know they're not going to want to throw all their money into it. So then I try to fall within the middle range. And then whatever that total is, I charge a deposit. I get started, I pay my team. Then after that deposit's been paid and the presentation's been submitted, and we go into the bid set processing, the back and forth, the construction, all that. I'll divide that. So I'd say like, okay, maybe this process will take 3 to 4 months, and then I'll take whatever's left over from that and I divide it into a monthly payment. And then that will include basically my time for what it is as far as design process. And then I charge a fee, like between 20 to 25%, but sometimes I do 15 if I'm feeling nice. Um, and that will be on any FF&E. So like wallpaper, plumbing. I don't really do it off stone because that can get very expensive. Millwork, I'll do it if I do have to do a lot of millwork. Like this particular client already has her kitchen design, so I'm not going to charge on that because I didn't do that. But I would charge on millwork depending on the agreement. If they push back on the bid set price, then I kind of take some of that off and then I add to the millwork.
Yeah. And so the first part is only your design services. And then the second part is you being from once the design is approved, then you're in construction, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
charge it as one lump flat fee. I noticed in the past when I do a smaller flat fee, and then I charge hourly for that construction back and forth, which is really where we spend so much time and gas, right? And the driving that we don't factor in, and just like countless hours. Because they think a quick call, but it's not just a quick call, because that call comes with a decision, and then that decision has to be sent down the pipeline to the GC, the mill worker, the plumber. And then we have to get on a call and we have to figure out how you change one little thing, it changes everything else. And then we have to go back to it's just, they don't realize all that back and forth. So when you start to bill them, then they get like, whoa, I was not expecting this. So I think I'm just going to eliminate the hourly rate. The only time I would incorporate like an hourly rate would be if construction goes past like 6 months or whatever the anticipated, because at that point then you're not getting paid anymore, because let's say you divided it by 3 months. Now we're at month 6 and you've been working for 3 months for free. I think after that certain period, then okay, an hourly rate has to apply because I have to go out there, I have to, you know. So that's kind of the only way, that part. And then the procurement side, which is now we go shopping for furniture, decorative lighting, wallpaper, all of that. That's a 15, for her, I'll be doing 15%, but usually I do 25. But it really kind of equals out because in most of these places, they get 45% off, 15% off. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah. So you give the client that percentage included. That's nice because some people don't. So it's good to have that. And one of the reasons I asked is because this is for designers and for clients. Sometimes it's hard for them to understand like the process and to understand why you're charging them. But that percentage that you said based on that square footage price, that doesn't include the GC. It's just
No,
your services.
that's my services. In most cases, the GC isn't even in the picture yet because they haven't had selected them. If the GC is the one that recommends the project, then he's in the picture. But that's not construction. That's just for my time, my expertise, and my ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then really where I mean, the ideas are great, but really, and the ideas, at least for me, I have like this really open crown chakra. So ideas just, that's, I don't have shortage in idea, but the execution takes the life out of me. So that's really where the money goes towards, that like constant, like working with the team, making sure they understood, because you can send a rendering and they're like, oh yeah, we got it. And then the final product doesn't even look like it. So it's just like that very delicate step by step process where you're holding their hands, making sure everyone's talking to each other. Because then you get that whole, oh, I didn't know, but I didn't know. And so that team coordination is really the most time consuming part of the project, and it can make or break. If the design, a lot of clients think like, okay, well, you got the idea, it's like the job is done. It's like, no, you don't understand. If you want to see this idea come to life, you need to invest in a designer that is involved all the way to the end, because it will not happen. And they, I think, underestimate the importance of the designer being there, because sometimes they're like, well, I could have made that choice. It's like, no, I'm sure you would have still had to call me, because that choice then trickles down into other things. So let me just show up and do it, so that you don't have to worry about. They just don't get it. It's a hard thing for them to understand because that's not their field.
I've seen that a lot in projects I've worked on personally or projects from colleagues, and you can see the difference. And also, you can feel it. And when I say feel it, you can see the state of the client. They are stressed or not happy, or they're just not content, and the project ends up being something that it's so much work and so on. And then you see when a project the client did allow the designer or architect to be involved, and they're glowing. They're literally glowing.
You can tell, and it's not that micromanagement is bad, because I feel like when the client is heavily involved, it makes her job so much easier to make decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's some clients that don't trust the process and don't trust you to do what you have to do or what your expertise are. And that's when it becomes stressful, because they start to get in their own way. And then it just starts to get a little out of hand. And then we have to kind of reel them in and go, okay, hold on, let's take a step back. So, yes, I think when they allow us to do what we're supposed to do, right? Because they're hiring us to take that load off, to get help to see the vision. I think what helps my clients, at least what they have told me based on their feedback, is that I do such a good job at communicating the vision, be it presentation, renderings, but I try my hardest to really get them to see the vision, so much that they've taken the renderings and like put it on their phone, because they just stand in the space and stare at it from time to time and they daydream about it. So I kind of, that's how I keep them happy, soothed and trust. Like, I know it looks bad right now, but look at this, you know? So they'll tell me, I daydream about this. I go to the empty space and I look at the renderings, and that's how and then when the final product happens, they're like, wow, it looks just like the rendering. So I think that's how I get them to just trust the process and feel relaxed, even when it's not looking, that construction phase is scary to anyone. I get anxious and I'm used to it. Imagine someone just giving you thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they have to just trust the process. Scary thing.
Scary thing. I think we can definitely use that as well in our own lives, right? When we're transforming or changing, or even in a move, like when people are moving or are in a transition where it's physical or emotional. There's always this part of the construction of the ugliness, of the dirty, that, or the unknown, right? And it feels stressful because you have,
Uncertainty, yeah. It can really bring up our inner demons, that fear of like, I have no control, especially for the clients that do have that control tendency. Some clients are very go with the flow, and others are very like, I want to be involved in everything. Um, and I don't even get bothered by it, because I am that client. When I hire people, I'm like, let me do it. And it's like, wait, no, I paid you to do it. So let me back off. But it is scary. Uncertainty is scary, because you're trusting someone else with your home.
You talked about the persona, the client you work with. And in that moment, in that meeting, I call it discovery session, you kind of feel what they need and what the final product is, but you also feel if you guys are a good fit. Walk me through that. Like, how do you know?
That has been something that I have learned the hard way. Some clients are not. And in the past, because I have this tendency of being a people pleaser and I want to help everybody. And even though I see the red flags, I'm still like, yes, I can help you and I can work within your, within your scope, within your parameters, even though I know that I won't be able to afford to do that because I have an overhead, I have a team to pay. And then I become just the middleman that's not making money, right? For the sake of having this project. So in the past, I've done that. And now I'm a little bit more in tune with my yes, my hard yes and my hard no. And now if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I say no. And that's scary because when you need the project, you need the project. But I've noticed that when you say yes to the things that aren't in alignment, you're pushing back all the things that are just right there, waiting for you to do something differently. Right? So it's like that test, that little carrot they're dangling. So when you say no, this isn't working, or I won't be able to work on this project, and you can tell based on their verbiage if they're just looking for you to do things for a bargain, which I don't mind helping, but this is a luxury. Interior design is a luxury, it's not a charity, right? So I have to be able to afford the people that are going to be helping us execute this project. Because then, if I'm doing it all on my own, I can't possibly handle everything. Things are going to fall through the cracks and you're going to complain. So, if you want that very amazing experience, then we have to make sure that we can both be happy with it. So, I'm not burned out, but then you also don't feel taken advantage of. So, I listen a lot to the keywords. I've had clients say like I'm looking for like an up and coming interior designer. And that's already telling me you're looking for someone that's new, that's not really established, that's not charging a lot. And I said yes to it and now I regret it because that was very, the ones that want to pay the least give you the biggest headaches. So, but I agreed to it, so I'm going to see it through. And even though it's costing me now, um, I still want them to be happy, and I want to make sure that when we walk away from the project, they're happy, and my name is still in good terms. So I have done that. And at the end, you end up liking the person, and you're just like, oh, whatever, I'll do it for free. You're so adorable, whatever it is. But there is a fine line where you have to be careful because then you won't make money.
So, where do you feel your hell yeses? Do you feel it in your body or do you feel
Oh
it?
yeah, I feel it in my gut. It's like, that human design. I'm a generator, if you know about this stuff, but generator, at least mine, it's basically I have to listen to my gut. My gut is a yes or a no. And if it's a yes, I'll feel that fire and that excitement. And I know that it's a yes. If I feel that like, then it's a no.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's hard to tune into that because in paper it can seem perfect. In paper, everything looks perfect. But if you forget that little voice or that little feeling, in your case, in your gut, then the hell yes, you can feel it.
Yeah. You can feel it and you can tell very rare times I've had a no. I think it's been two times. One I very much regretted. The guy was borderline abusive, and that's why now in my contract I have like no abuse clause. Like don't bully me, and I won't bully you, and we're gonna respect each other. I have to add that because it was pretty intense. But we learn from that. I think we have to meet these kinds of situations in order to see what we don't want sometimes, and not live in the clouds thinking because it looks perfect on paper that that's how it's going to turn out. You have to read the room and read the person.
Then what am I? Like if I was your client, you mentioned about elements and that elements change.
Hmm.
What am I today?
So, okay, I would get to know you more. You give a little bit of that water element where you tune in really well. You're very intuitive, I think, at least with the last two times we've spoken, how you just pick up on things. So that's like a water element. They're very intuitive. And that could come as far as personality, but it depends in your life what you're going through. Like when I became a new mom, I was very much the earth element. So depending on what you're going through, which I don't know, I would have to get to know you more to see. But you're giving me water element where you
Okay.
probably are inclined to blues or aquas, like water element tones. Am I even close?
So it's interesting. Well, okay, okay,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
okay. There's more. There's more. There's. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you do like blue.
I do like blue. I have actually, you can't really tell, but this is kind of blue. If Because the thing is with the elements, it's something new for me, new in the past like few years, and it's something that I study a lot and read a lot, but I don't really stick to something specific just because I like to come with a sense of curiosity, right? Of learning. So I learned through you the things that you have experienced.
Mhm.
And then I get to know you through that out of curiosity.
That's very water element of you because they're usually like the intuitives. They love tuning into other people. So they're like the philosophers. That's kind of how they come across. I actually have it on my blog. If you go on, I have two websites, but the sacredspaces.shop.com has a few blogs I created, and it tells you the five different personality types based on the elements. And it kind of just gives you a little bit of what your temperament is. If you're feeling stagnant, because water could become stagnant sometimes, how to get it to flow again, the creativity, the energy.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I'm curious because then what happens with because I know in astrology you also have elements, right? Depending on when you were born.
Mhm.
But the elements you're speaking about is different, right? Or is
It
it
is. It is because, well,
okay?
in some cases it's the same. And for example, this client, his wife is a Scorpio, so she happens to have that water element. Plus, she is that personality type with the water element. Um, for example, and it doesn't really translate apples to apples because we have four elements in astrology and we have five elements in feng shui. So one's kind of like off, hanging around. But it does sometimes work out because sometimes you'll see someone that's a fire element and they like the color yellow or they like the color red. So yeah, or they love leather, and leather is any animal prints, any like leather, that's fire element because it's like people and animals, right? So sometimes you'll see that resemblance and it's kind of cool to see. But my best friend, for example, her house, she's very earth element, but she's a Scorpio. So she doesn't have a lot of water personality at all. She's very much earth all the way. So sometimes it doesn't equal out. And that's why it's in feng shui, it changes. I can be, you have a predominant one, right? Like I think I'm a lot of metal because everything is just like precision, right? But there's seasons that I'm just in my earth element and I just want to go outside and ground and I want to be with my baby and I want to do things with him and arts and crafts. I think throughout the day we shift through all of these. Whereas with astrology, you're born with it. That's all you that's all you have. you know.
Yeah, that's why I ask because it's very different, and I agree. I'm very connected to water. I've always been connected. I have this like crazy thing that my mom told me once. Like we used to go to this Asian restaurant when I was younger, and they had a lot of prints on the wall of like ponds and lilies and all of this. And one time, or maybe the first time, I don't know, that I went in, I'm like, Mom, water. And I started like taking off my clothes in front of everyone because I was gonna jump in.
Oh,
And then I have this friend that didn't know this story, and we were, I think, in Costa Rica, and we rented a car and we were driving all around. And she says at the end of the trip, it's like every time you see water, you just jump in. It doesn't matter anything. Basically, what's wrong with you?
so amazing. When were you born?
In February 15th.
Okay, hello. You're a Pisces.
I'm actually Aquarius.
Really?
I'm
Oh,
actually
yes, that's right. It's on the 20th. Okay, well, yeah, an Aquarius, it's a water bearer. So those two signs
yeah.
are very, very in tune to the water element, which is so funny. Wow. I love it. See,
Yeah, I
just listening to those keywords will give you, we give our personality away just with the words we use.
it's just being wow. I've never thought about it that way because really I started tuning into the elements very recently. And I always thought I was water. I always thought I was water because of Aquarius. Yeah.
We know deep down what we're in tune to.
Yeah.
So, looking into that, like I use the elements a lot to even within my own family dynamic. Like, why are we clashing? What's going on here? And then I'll look at like, okay, well, he's a very fire element. So am I subduing him a little bit? Like, what am I doing? Am I fueling him or am I shutting him down? And then I try to adapt my personality or what I'm doing or the exercises that we're playing with to help him.
And I'm guessing it also helps you, right? Like you are very clear in the sense of I'm wood, but I use metals to cut the wood
Mhm.
whenever I'm using that part of myself too much. So the excess.
Yeah, because then I'll plan my life like 15 years in advance, and then I'm like, well, why is nothing happening? Because I'm seeing so far ahead, but I'm not taking action, which is that metal element that's like, okay, let's get organized and make it happen.
Yeah, interesting. Because then there's also taking accountability for action. And because, yeah, we can see the future, we can plan for the future, but if there's no action of the daily task,
And
then
it's just
there's
a
no.
potential, really. It's not, it's just the potential is there, but are you taking the steps to do it? So it's kind of like finding that balance between manifestation and action. And that's kind of, how I built this business, really.
Manifestation and actions. So, talking about manifestation, how do you keep yourself like accountable to be able to manifest the things that you want in your life?
That's where that metal comes in, where I am a little bit of a crazy person with my calendar. But the first thing I do, I start off with, I read this book years ago by Lewis Howes. It's called The School of Greatness. And one of my favorite things I got from that book was to create your perfect day routine. So I work my way backwards and I say, okay, if money wasn't an issue, if, if I just could wake up and pick my perfect day, what would it look like? And realistically speaking, because you can't be on vacation every single day. I mean, some people can, but that's not the reality, right? You would get bored. So, what would the perfect day look like where you're feeling fulfilled, right? Because I'm sorry, but sipping mimosas on the beach will get old after a while. So, what are you doing for fulfillment? So, I kind of envision that long term view. Like, what does my perfect house look like? How am I waking up in the morning? Is my kid homeschooled or going to school? Every detail. Do I have a chef making me breakfast? Do I start with meditation or do I start with a workout? So I actually have it because I recreate it from time to time because the vision changes. And I wrote it down yesterday. I was like, okay, so I like redid it. And then I have obviously based on when I have my son and when I don't. And I do like 8 a.m. this, 8:30 this, the whole way down up until bedtime. And I just walk myself through that. And then I look at, okay, well, what needs to happen in order for me to do that? For me to be my future self, what would she do today? So, okay, if I have on there, I wake up and I go out in sunlight to ground. Okay, well, I need to do that now, right? So I put it into my calendar and I use Asana. I can't live without it. That's where that crazy metal element comes in, where it's like everything is on there. And if it's not on there, it doesn't happen. So I just log it in. I put 8 a.m. sunlight grounding, and it's just there in my face. Unless I check it off, it's there, right? So I work my schedule my perfect day in my calendar, and Asana has this cool thing where you just set it to repeat, so you only have to do it one time. And then I weave in everything else. Like I'll put, between 11 and 5, that's my work hours. So obviously if there's a meeting at 12, I just pop it in there, but I know that these are my windows for self-care, for, work, for my home, family time, my son, and that's kind of how I keep myself accountable.
Yeah, it's interesting. And how do you, like, for example, I've been encountering this where it's like my energy, I'm spreading it too much in the sense of like, I'm doing this, I'm working on this, I'm working on this, I'm working. And all the time I'm working on these like 5 things, let's say. And I was thinking today, like, no, this is not okay. Like for me, it's not, it works for different people. But for me, I need more time in the morning, for example, for the self care, which is light, movement. In my case, I need to move my body and then prepare a good meal, like after I do all these things, right? Oh, and I read as well. I love reading and meditating. But then, then the day starts and it's like a organized chaos. But I'm thinking like there's something has to change. So how do you keep yourself?
So it's interesting that you said that because the other day I wrote this routine and I'm like, this looks way too simple compared to how I need to pack every minute. Every minute counts. That was my thing back then. And I learned the hard way that a jack of all trades is a master of none, and you cannot master everything. You have to know what you're good at and what you have to delegate. And when it came to like building my marketing plan, building my website, yeah, I can do all of these things, but I don't want to because there's no humanly possible way that we can do that. It's just too many hats. So you delegate what you can delegate, and then you really keep it, you bring it down to the most simplest thing. Like, what is your purpose? Anything else that doesn't add to that purpose gets delegated or gets removed. And that's the hardest thing, I think, for me, because since I'm that wood element and the visionary, every time I see something, I'm like, I see a business opportunity. That can be a business. That can be a business. That can be a business. So if you leave it up to me, I'll turn it all into something. But sometimes we have to become aware that ideas, I love this. It's we don't have ideas, ideas have us. So sometimes you're just downloading this idea that's not for you. Maybe it's for like the person next to you, you know? So kind of knowing what's for you and what's just you're downloading from consciousness. And that happens a lot where I get the idea and a few months later somebody else comes out with the product. I should have done it. It wasn't for me. Otherwise it would have been done, right? It would have been done through me. So kind of letting go of that anxiety or tuning into why. Why do I have to have my schedule so packed? Or why do I have to do all of these things and spread myself so thin? And when I realized that all of that was like needing to feel this fulfillment of like, I'm so busy. It's so good to be, but now I'm like, no, no, actually, I want to create wealth only sticking to my purpose. And that,
What is your purpose?
well, I think transforming spaces is an aspect, right? Would I do it if I was a millionaire and had no money? I mean, and money wasn't an issue. I would have to be creative or I would go crazy. But I think that that creativity would come in different ways and maybe would be helping women create whatever business comes along with their purpose. The way that using these practices, the way that I created my business, I would help women do that as well. And then create really cool artistic interiors, the kind that go, on the magazine and it's like one once a year thing. It's kind of like this artistic piece, and then I would retrieve back, into my little cocoon, and then just like, I don't know, play with farm animals.
I love that so much. Yeah. Anything else for the audience and like anything you want to share where people can find you as well? And we will link all that to the show notes.
Well, my Instagram, which is Sacred Spaces Studio. There is a Sacred Spaces shop, but I'm not active on it yet. Still not sure what I'll be doing with that. So each of those has their own website. The website for the shop has a lot of cool feng shui tips. So anything that you are interested in, as far as like what your element is, there's a quiz on there that you can take, and kind of it takes you through the journey to see what it is that's most in alignment with you. And then my actual studio is just like my portfolio, basically, and where you can learn more about the philosophy for the brand. And then my personal Instagram is Penelope S. Romero. And that's just more of my day to day life. Soon I will be transforming that one as well, kind of to focus more on helping women, but that's still in creation mode. So whatever you see on there, it's going to change. It's going to evolve, expand, I guess.
Yeah, and then my last question would be Penelope. Like growing up with this name and what does it mean for you?
Oh my gosh. So growing up, it's an interesting thing. Penelope is the wife of Odysseus from the Odyssey. So she's a Greek princess, right? So my mom fell in love with that name when she read the Odyssey in high school. And she's like, that's it, that's my daughter's name. So I became that. Even though I believe that we pick our own names, and somehow intuitively they just pick up on that. I think so, because when you read the name personality, it's almost like identical to you. It's like, well, they wouldn't know that, right? That's something that is beyond human explanation. But what it means to me, well, I grew up my whole life where she would play the song of the story of the name, and like would hound me with it. This is your name. This is your. So I just kind of grew up. Well, okay, Penelope is the wife of a guy that went away to war, and she was super faithful, and he came back, and they lived happily ever after. So the name literally means loving and faithful wife. And I think that I really live up to that. I guess that Libra in me that's very loyal. I live up to it very much. And that's really what it means to me, I think. It's just what the story that I've heard over and over again. But I
Loyalty.
think it's unique too, because I grew up struggling with that. Nobody, man, I had so many nicknames, because when you have a name like that, that is not so common, they start to tease you when you're like in elementary school. But then in middle school, I just became proud of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how our names can define us, and it's a journey to accept it. Like even our name is a journey to accept.
It's interesting because I was just talking about that the other day. When I studied numerology, the name is a vibration. So even when you're naming your business, it's so important to keep that in mind. And every letter comes with a numerological vibration. And when I was studying, I remember there were people in the class where they had a lot of I's in their name, which kind of creates a little bit of a struggle of a vibration. And they went and they changed their I's to Y's in their passport, government, everything, like everything. that's like that's like a $900 process. So yeah, vibration is important.
Wow. I have a Y and an I, so
Y is good. I mean, listen, we can't. It's a
yeah.
combination, you know. But some people have like three, four I's in the name, and it's like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
the balance of both. So
yeah.
thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate it for your honesty and openness, and I hope this is the first of many, many collaborations.
Yes, thank you. I love to see women like you just taking the leap and doing things like this, because, you got to start, right? And
Yeah.
expand. So I love it. I'm very excited for you.
Yeah, this has started something new in me. And I realized, like you mentioned, the water barrier, like yes, I hold my community. I hold the emotions. And sometimes I feel like keeping it in four walls is not enough. Like something happened that I'm like, I want more people to see beautiful, all the people I'm surrounded by, the people I admire, you know, people like you. Like there's so much out there. And I just want more people to
Yeah,
use their
well,
voice.
like a true Aquarius. That's where we are. We're at the brink of the Aquarius age where it's all about technology and connecting people through technology and bringing a community together, which is exactly what you're doing. You're just following your calling. That's what you're doing. And it's so cool to see, you know, you
Thank
stepping
you.
into your purpose.
Thank you. Thank you
So
so
I
much.
love it. Thank you.
Space Whispers. Thank you for spending time with me today. Your host, Rainy, on the Space Whispering podcast. I hope today's episode gave you something to reflect on, inspire you, or energize you to create something beautiful. Help us grow this soulful community and spread the love by subscribing to the podcast, leaving a review, or sharing this episode with your community. If you're feeling called to transform your inner or outer spaces into a true reflection of you, let's connect. Schedule a discovery session with me at rainy.co or Instagram rainy_. What soulful actions will you take today? Keep listening to the whispers of creation and let your soul's magic flow into the world. See you soon. Besitos.